Specialist for Engineering Entrepreneurship, and this is Invent for the Planet. For the past 48 hours, teams from 14 different countries have been working on solving some of the most difficult problems that are facing our world. Everyone from Cambodia to Wichita State has been looking to solve problems such as water scarcity, trash buildup, and accumulating floodwaters. Today, you'll see 8 teams from Texas A&M present their solutions to some of these issues. First up is Team Samara with their solution to accumulating floodwaters. But before, I would like our judges to...
A solution to rural medication.
Rural medication. My apologies. It's been a long weekend. But first, I'd like our judges to introduce themselves. We have a wonderful panel of judges today. First up is Maria Alves. Why don't y'all each stand up, introduce yourselves to the audience,
Sure.
and tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Howdy.
Howdy.
My name is Maria Alves. I'm the director for the Engineering Global Programs, and in that role, we're developing opportunities for you guys to develop your global mindset and be connected with all the engineers around the world. So I'll be happy to see the solutions that you bring up facing everybody in the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Roland Block, and I am the Associate Director at the Career Center for all of Engineering. But the reason why I'm here is I'm a mechanical engineer, class of '92, and was in product engineering, R&D project management, all the way to Director of Global Marketing for medical device companies ranging from startup to Fortune 300.
Elizabeth Morris, Special Advisor and Agency Director for the Engineering Extension Service. Won the Responders Aggies Invent with the Motley Tool. Had a great team. So looking forward to seeing what you guys have.
Y'all know me, but my name is Rodney Bain. And I'm the Director of Engineering Entrepreneurship, and I've had the pleasure to work with y'all as well as the teams around the world. So I haven't really been as engaged with y'all this particular Aggies Invent. However, I'm excited to see what you've come up with, and really want to let you know that what's going to happen is that the winning team from here, as we talked about earlier, 14 other teams are going to be judged against the winning team from here. And they're coming from Cambodia and Brazil and Thailand and all these different places around the world. So this is a very, very unique event. Y'all have connected around the world, you've worked with people around the world, and it's really been gratifying to see everything that y'all have come up with. So let's get started.
Wonderful. So our first team up is Samara with a rural medication delivery system.
So you'll have to pull it up. So just exit out of that. There you go.
Howdy, y'all.
Howdy.
I'm Will, mechanical engineering freshman.
Howdy, I'm Jacob. I'm a freshman engineer as well.
Brendan Acosta, junior electrical engineer.
My name's David. I'm a freshman looking to go into Aero.
My name's Alicia. I'm a junior in biomedical engineering.
I'm Mohammed, sophomore biomedical engineering.
And please enjoy.
Inspired by the way the Samara seed falls from the maple tree, our team has designed a solution to quickly transport fragile, temperature-sensitive medicine for routine or emergency care to rural communities. After dropping our insulated payload, it quickly and accurately falls to our target. Before impact, we use an auto-rotation braking system to slow the speed and prevent damage to the delicate medication inside. The payload will emit a signal so the patient can retrieve their medicine safely and quickly.
Hi, we are Team Samara. Today, in over 40 countries, millions of people have a problem. They're people just like us. And may have complications, ranging from diabetes to HIV to strokes and heart attacks. In many of these situations, they need access to temperature-sensitive medication, and they need to get it as quick as possible. In many of the countries in blue, war, poverty, corruption, poor roads, and harsh terrain make it near impossible for emergency vehicles to reach rural areas. Our need statement, first and foremost, is to help them, and we're going to do it.
So we have our problem laid out. What's our solution? So we all collaborated. We came up with 5 key points that we wanted to hit on, and that was low cost, of course, because we're going into impoverished areas. But we wanted it to be durable because this thing is surviving a fall from a few hundred feet up. We wanted it to be biodegradable to reduce our carbon footprint on the area. And as we all know, third countries have a lot of trash problems going on. We wanted to be insulated because we were working with temperature-sensitive medicines. We wanted to be lightweight, not only to help out with the costs, but also with a portion of the durability. And so once we had those 5 key points down, we wanted to break it up, say, okay, what area are we going to specify into? So we were focusing on delivery of the medicines, so we could do a hard drop or a soft drop. If we were doing hard drop, we were basically going to make this thing an impact, or like shovel this thing into the ground, make sure it can survive. But we figured probably not the best thing for medicine. So soft drop, you do parachutes. Parachutes have been done before. They're also a little bit slower. But we came up with the idea of drawing inspiration from these Samara saplings as they propel down and land gracefully. So we let that inspire us.
So how it works? A patient calls the pharmacy for a specific medicine, and then the pharmacy sends a RC plane to RC plane, and attached to the RC plane there is the medication in our device Samara, and then it's gonna deliver it to the patient in a matter of minutes to hours.
Let's talk a bit more about the payload. We discussed parachutes, but they're inaccurate and slow. We discussed just cushioning the landing, but that's not the best for what's inside. So how did we do it? We decided to use a technique common in helicopter crash landings called an auto-rotation. So as our payload falls, we generate lift with our rotors in a certain position. At the last moment, or at the last moment possible, we switch the direction of those rotors and we create a tremendous amount of lift. This doesn't take out all of our downwards velocity, so we still need some sort of cushion. We've decided to go with an outer frame, or an outer shell, made out of a lightweight, biodegradable, and streamlined material similar to what is used in packing peanuts. Inside of that, we have an inner cage. In that cage, we have a form of insulation with ice that'll keep the payload cool. We have the electronics and the motor with the cam mechanism to work on the rotors. And we have all of the control for that just built into this cage.
More on the electronics of our device. Our device is based on an Adreno platform. Using only a barometric sensor and the stepping motor, we are able to precisely calculate the time we need to articulate the propellers to provide the most lift. In future renovations of our device, we want to include a dedicated chip that would reduce dramatically the size and cost of our creation. Also, there is an ice puck that will be located in the bottom of our capsule to regulate any medicine that might require temperature regulation for the required amount of time.
We believe that we have found the most ideal solution to this problem. It's cost effective. These materials are cheap. They can be implemented in third world countries. The ease of manufacturing is only 2 pieces. It can be manufactured in mass. We have overgone the road conditions by traveling through air, and we are able to keep our medications at the temperature that they require. Upon further research, we noticed that this market has been largely untouched. Ground transportation is the main method to get these medications to rural areas. Zipline in Rwanda has developed a technology where they launch an AV plane, but they're only dropping a cardboard box that is only meant to hold blood, and so it's not as effective as our solution. The Matternet dome is a solution that's used in Europe, but it's very expensive and would not be applicable in other third world areas. And so as you can see on the left side, Samara has offered solutions that can be applicable in many different situations. The two types of customers that we're looking at in this situation would be customers that are experiencing an emergency situation and they need drugs administered by a medic immediately. In that case, the speed is critical. In another situation, many patients suffer from chronic diseases but live in rural areas where they're not able to access those medications. Patients who suffer from HIV and from diabetes, they need medication every day. And so we believe, ladies and gentlemen, that we have found a solution that will safely and quickly deliver this medicine to the rural communities in need.
As for things to improve, we only found 4 things. First of all, we want to start by looking at new areas that don't allow drones to fly and getting permission to go there to use our technology. Second, we'd like to go and visit customer and pharmacy payload package tracking so that the customer and the pharmacy are able to see where the medicine is at all times. Third, we want to be able to penetrate dense vegetation to reach people who are in very dense forests. And finally, what we want to do is we want to improve the durability and the accuracy of our product. This is the most important feature. It's in over 40 countries where this matters. People whose lives are dependent on temperature-sensitive medicine need our project to work. And as you've spoken, we've proven that it does work. It works, and it meets our design requirements. It's innovative, and it is unique. It's cost-effective, and it's feasible. All we ask now is for you to join us in our mission. Thank you.
Great job, Samara. Judges, now is the time for questions. You'll have 5 minutes. Rolling.
Yes, great presentation, thank you. So what is your estimated cost for the device and payload, and what do you see as being reusable, and how would you end up reusing it?
I can answer that. So we are looking around $20 per, I guess we call it a pod, $20 per pod. Most of it is through, I believe, styrofoam injections, multi-styrofoam injections to make casts for the outer bases of it. The rudders, of course, and all of the electronic components, those will all be one piece. Or the Arduino would be simplified down to a basic circuit board, but we believe we can get this down to around $20.
As far as usability goes, I know David has a lot to say.
Well, so we can see this as useful in many different situations. We can see this, you know, if we load multiple of them on a plane, we can fly a route, and similar to maybe Uber, we can calculate the best trajectory for that route and get quick drops in succession. We would like this to be used in dense jungle forest canopies because there are many people who live in those environments. We'd like it to be useful in a more aqueous or island atmosphere because that presents certain challenges to how the plane flies and how our guidance works. So we see this as very applicable in many different atmospheres.
And to reference the reusability, most of this would be biodegradable. It would just be the electronic component that wouldn't be. We talked briefly about having an initiative that would encourage the users to bring this back, and they might be rewarded with something to consider.
But most important, we wanted to make sure that whatever our product was, it would get to the people first, and reusability was a second option.
Okay, I've got a quick question. You chose to go into auto rotation where you have to detect how far away you are from the ground so that you're going to switch the blades. Why did you do that rather than just to try to drop it and like the seeds, and just keep it with a fix? Why did you choose to do that?
Well, if we were just using the spinning for accuracy, that's really all we're getting out of that. We're getting the accuracy, and then it's just a dead drop from that point. That hard impact is from 200 feet. That's really hard to dampen with small glass vials or syringes. That's nearly impossible to cushion that impact and reliably. So maybe it works sometimes, but what if it lands on a rock? We like the auto rotation because it gives us some flexibility in that initial impact, and the styrofoam allows for let's say it does get damaged, they're not messing with some metal container. You can just rip it in half when you're at your medication. So there's really no fiddling with it once you get the package. You have it and you can use it right away.
So you said RC. I'm assuming that's radio control.
Right. Well, so there is a lot of stigma behind drone and UAV and RC plane. These all mean different things in our heads. What we imagine is the size of a large RC plane, but guided by GPS, so unmanned. We don't like saying drone because you picture a military, spying operation type of mechanism, but we do picture something along the sides of a large RC plane.
Our pods are certainly capable of being thrown out the side of a helicopter or a biplane. We've made it so where, it doesn't have to just be a straight release system from a certain plane. We just went with RC as our base ratio.
You're not going to get a helicopter or a plane under jungle canopy, so. But somebody, even if it's unmanned, is going to have to be the pilot. You get on a very important point. Everything's considered a spy. So you have to look at what might be reused by nefarious folks who might intercept these things.
Yes.
Yes, and that's the advantage of carrying a minimal amount. If you have a pharmaceutical that's very expensive and is compromised, that would be a liability to us.
To be clear here too, the plane, certainly, it goes out and drops them and it comes back. The payload is the only thing it's difficult to retrieve, but our main goal here is saving lives.
Any other questions, judges? Great. Thank you, Team Samara.
That was really good.
Up next, we have Team Light It Up. But before they begin their presentation, we're going to give the judges a few minutes to record their scores.
Can we put this on the chair? Because if it's
Yeah, you're going to have to change your presentation. One second, I want to make sure all the judges are ready first. Okay, this is Team Light It Up.
Howdy.
Howdy.
My name is Aaron Sil.
My name is Shalal Babatunde.
My name is Bakaya Eustace.
My name is Megan May.
Stop Alamani. Nico Wilcourt.
And we present to you Lumea.
Saja's in love with school.
مدرستي بعيدة وبتعب بالمشي كتير. بحب المدرسة. يعني واحد ما بحب الدراسة.
Saja studies with her friends just like any other student.
أنا أصدقائي بندرس. هي تسمع لي وأنا بسمع لها هيك مثله.
But the learning is limited. Saja and her friends are stuck in the dark,
معوقات الدراسية إنه ما في ضوء.
saved only when the sun rises once again.
بفيق من الصبح إنه مشان أدرس إنه هيك بفيق عبكير مشان أحفظ.
If she could, She would study from dusk till dawn.
تعذب بس ما نروح وش نسوي.
Satya is stuck there, in the dark, but she's not there alone. Along with another 1.58 billion people on Earth, they're trapped within the darkness. Lumea, an organic light solution which empowers students to light their own path through the dark of this world, whether that's a villain in a book or the dark in their own homes.
وهلا عندي أمنية أنت حقق إنه حلمي.
Alright, so our goal is to create an inexpensive method in order to light up a certain area so that students can study at night, even in places where they don't have ready access to electricity.
In 2014, over 1 billion of the world's population lived in areas that had limited to no access to electricity. And of those 1 billion people, only a little over 300 million of those people came from Chad and India alone. And of people who used alternative light sources such as the burning of biofuels like kerosene and wood, 4 million died in 2014 due to the fumes emitted by burning biomasses.
So what is it going to take on this energy crisis? First, we know that we need to produce light in a dark environment. We know that. But it also needs to be accessible for students and safe for children. It needs to be big enough so Saja and her friends can study together. It needs to be low cost. We can't have fancy materials here. And also, it needs to be simple to construct and easy to maintain. Those are the things that we identified that it has to have.
Now, we've figured out 4 main ways in order to solve this problem. The first one being the typical one that people think of when they assume this kind of problem. They think of solar panels. The issue with that is that solar panels are too expensive to maintain and build inside of low places that have low electricity as it is, let alone paying for it. The next thing we thought of was a way to keep cranking a generator using a mechanical system. The issue with that, though, is that it's also infeasible to assume that you'd be able to get a lot of power for a long amount of time without a lot of work for it. Another thought we had was a gyroscope toy that would allow a gyro generator to be able to go inside a toy, ball, or hula hoop, something that kids can play with in order to power it up and light it up. Although you can't exactly predict how much placement is going to be needed, and it seems very difficult in order for us to do maintenance on. That's why bioluminescence is obviously the most brilliant idea we have to have, because ultimately it does not require direct electricity, and it's mainly a good source of creating light for a long amount of time.
So in meeting our requirements, bioluminescence automatically solves the first problem. It's a self-sustaining bacteria that produces its own light without need for any photosynthetic materials or methods or any other requirements. In terms of making this accessible, we're going to be promoting this to children in their own residential homes and especially to schools to incentivize science as well and to create an unconventional method for them to provide light, something interesting that would go around, become something that would be popular among children. Thirdly, in terms of making this tenable for a large amount of students, at least 5 or more, we're going to be using diffusing light and other refractory devices to be able to spread the light over a large amount of area, at least around 25 square feet. In terms of low-cost material, the algae kits that we're going to be using in the construction of the prototype that we're using is going to be extremely affordable, and especially in terms of its alternatives like solar panels. And fifth, in terms of silicon construction, these are going to be simple parts like cogs and gears. You put them together and easily maintained but irreplaceable. Now, in terms of bioluminescence, although it's unconventional, it's not new. There's a lot of research that's already been ongoing in use of it as an alternative light source. The Philips company has begun a model of using a wall-mounted self-sustaining system that feeds the bioluminescence bacteria using methane and composted materials, but it's not bright enough. Cambridge, however, has built on this, implementing bioluminescent bacteria with an E. coli and genetically modifying them to become brighter and have a wider range of colors. Our approach, however, is based on 4 main benefits. The first is the cultivation of these bacteria in large growth factors using algae farms. They're affordable and you get a lot of yield. And on top of that, they can be sustained in extreme temperature conditions, especially in hot climates, which is going to be in the majority of the regions that this is going to be marketed to.
And most importantly, as opposed to the other alternatives, it's powerless. This system requires no electricity whatsoever and creates its own light. It is its own light source.
So with bioluminescent bacteria, we need to agitate this to get the chemical reaction that's going to produce the light that we need. We wanted something that was simple and easy for the kids to use, because the reason these kids are studying at night is probably because they're working all day to help their families. So what we looked at was mechanical clock design, especially wind-up clocks. By using this design, all the child will need to do is pull a string to build up potential energy into a spring, and as that's converted into kinetic energy, it would then agitate our bioluminescent bacteria. The other thing that's nice about the clock technology is it's been around for a really long time, so we could design a simple gearbox made up with the springs and the gears that would go into the device and be easily removable in case a spring were to fail. The child can easily replace it. It's not too complicated for them. As you see from our CAD drawing, once we have our mechanical device to turn it, we have something based off of a dryer. What's nice about the dryer design is that it's going to agitate our bacteria as much as possible, encouraging as much of a chemical reaction as we can. And thirdly, to get as much light area as possible, we're going to mimic what we see in our everyday lights, which is a diffuser to spread the light out as much as possible.
For the marketing of our product, we chose the TOMS model. It's commonly known as the buy one, give one model. A institution such as a school, church, or nonprofit in a developed country will buy one of the kits, and then that would provide for a kit in an underdeveloped country. The kits would be sold as a scientific tool for teaching kids about biology and chemistry, and the kit is actually 4 times less expensive than a lot of the kits that are currently used today.
In terms of moving forward with this product, there's still a lot of development that needs to be undergone and is in the works. The first of all is the bacteria's lifespan. Currently, most contemporary bacteria species that are bioluminescent use at least 1 to 3 months of space in terms of their lifespan. But there are new synthetic bacteriums that can last up to 6 months that are able to produce enough light that would be equal to the amount of a 60-watt light bulb. In terms of that, we can also increase through genetic modification the sustainability of these bacteria to be able to sustain conditions in hot climate and arid areas. Also, we want to expand the market for this to businesses, hospitals, and other residential areas as emergency light sources, not just in regions that need it, but anywhere else, to make this a more marketable product that will become, instead of a unconventional cool thing to have, something that everyone will want.
Now, we have an energy crisis. We have an education crisis. But we're not dealing with hopeless children. We're dealing with passionate students like Saja and her friends who want to impact their community, who want the access that they can get. Now, they're stuck in the dark, but they know where the light is. And with your help, we can show them and we can empower them to make the light to their own path. We can help them light it up. Thank you. We're Light It Up.
Thank you, Light It Up. Judges, do you have any questions?
So, thank you. Very good presentation. Just a quick question or two. What is the sustainability of these algae? I mean, is there a storage criteria? Do they survive if they get very hot? Do they need lightness or darkness? What is the process for keeping them alive?
Typically they'd be used in small tanks that would be able to be sustained, usually especially in a school setting. And the benefit of using algae farms is that they're able to sustain a lot of hot climates and in dark lighting especially. So that would basically solve for the fact that they would need their own light. They need very little light to process their photosynthesis to create the bacteria that would be used for the device.
Oh, so you just sort of leave it outside a little bit in order for it to...
Or near a windowsill or any indirect light source that would have at least enough sunlight to activate or invoke the photosynthesis within the algae.
Then another quick question. Could you look up to see how much lux or lumen or foot candles you need to illuminate let's say a book in the darkness, and to ensure that this would be able to provide that type of level of illumination?
So, in this point in time, with the research done on bioluminescent bacteria, there is no conclusive data on the exact luminescence or lumens amount with these. But in terms of proportion, with fireflies, they produce the light that they produce is about 0.04 lumens. So in terms of that in like a quantity, if you were to have at least 250 milliliters of that, that would mimic a 60-watt light bulb, which I think ranges from about 1,800 to 2,000 lumens.
The bacteria, additionally, the bacteria are the brightest species of bioluminescence, so it's brighter than a firefly.
So you referenced cost. I know how much solar and the other is, so what is yours when you say it's a
So,
lot less expensive?
Our cost for one kit would be $25, and then as we mass produce, that cost will go down.
So your Tom's model, would these come self-contained? So when you buy one, the one that goes to underdeveloped country, would it be self-contained, or would you need to have the algae farm or that source over there to continue? See what I'm saying? You buy a kit, you send it over there. Where's the algae farm, and how are you going to reignite or self-sustain this unit once it leaves this country?
So the algae, the starter algae would be included in the kit, and then the kids are able to take the algae just as they do for beer brewing. They take the algae or bacteria, they grow it in a separate container, and then as soon as the 1 to 3 months are over, they take out the algae that they had and they put in the new algae.
Okay. The last thing is, can you drink it?
No, yeah.
You could no, however, it's non-toxic, so even if a child was to accidentally consume the material, it won't be toxic or it won't be harmful to them. That's one of the other benefits that makes it accessible to children, is that it's a non-toxic, non-harmful material.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about it being beer.
Oh, no, yeah.
Hey, when you're thirsty, you're thirsty. Liquids are liquid's liquid.
So, do you see this being developed for a fish tank or something along those lines? Is that when you say farming, is that the type of farming you're thinking about, that scale?
So algae farming currently is in a large containment unit, and they have these things called algae circles. And the algae has these specialized conditions like warmth and the minerals that they like to start blooming there. And generally, it doesn't take a lot of space. But if you have a place where you can do it separately in the maximum best conditions that you would like, then you can have a lot produced. Yeah. But they still can produce it at home. It's just they wouldn't be able to produce it as much.
You have time for one more question.
So what is part of your kit?
So the kit would be the starter algae kit, so that they can get a container and grow it on their own. So some of the algae, and then we would have a gearbox and the container that will hold the flask so that it can rotate. So it would be all ready to launch as soon as they got it.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Yeah, the one that's worn off.
Would y'all like to move these or in front of the table? it away, Team Remo Sense.
Howdy everyone, we are Team Remo Sense and we worked on remote monitoring of waste buildup in developing countries. And my name is Arundhati.
And I'm Johnny, I'm a mechanical engineering student. I'm Anup Tiwari, I'm a master's student in electrical engineering.
Industrial engineering.
Rohit Machani, mechanical engineering.
And I'm a senior chemical engineering student. So as you can tell, our team is very multidisciplinary. And this problem statement holds a very personal value to all of us. And so now we'd like to introduce our concept to you.
How do you feel when you see trash being piled up around you? An average person generates approximately 4 pounds of household waste per day. In many cities, the public waste collection points are omnipresent. However, due to improper monitoring and infrequent collection, they often overflow, causing harmful infection and pollution. We need a tool which is not only low cost, but also involves the public. This is where we come in, Remo Sense. Waste is generated in schools, apartment complexes, and hospitals, and other public areas. Remo Sense, through its ultrasonic sensors, monitors the level of waste in different bins, centralizes that information, and sends it through a wireless network to the collection company. This dynamic information is used to direct the trucks to every bin that needs attention. With our concept, we will be able to remotely control bin overflow and timely pickup of waste. We will also be able to invite the public to get involved in the process, acting with us to make the community better. Our product utilizes a QR code system with which users can interact with to report overflow of waste. This will result in a healthier and happier environment for you, your family, and community. Be part of the change one scan at a time.
And I'll pass it on to Johnny for the next part of the presentation.
Okay, here, let me ask you a question. Have you guys ever seen an overfilled trash bin, but still trying to stuff your coffee cup into the aperture, instead of just walking further to find an empty one? I have, shamefully. So, in all the corner of the world, from my homeland Taiwan to theirs, Mumbai, Bolivia, Pakistan, and Chennai, trashes are everywhere. We're seeing this problem, we're getting involved in this problem. The problem that's every day we wake up to work, that's garbage are still over there. The problem that the collection company has to operate a fleet of garbage trucks and cruising all day to collect one single full trash bins out of 10. It's not only inefficient, but also unsanitary, not to mention destroying the image of the country. So how can we make the change to reduce the cost of garbage collection? How can we make the trash bin never overfill again? After the first large trash bin has been launched for over decades, and no significant change has been made, what do people do then? What can we do? So here comes our 5 requirements. The first, it has to be cost efficient. In the market, most of the smart trash bins cost about $50, and that's just in the US. A family in Taiwan can be fed with the same amount of money for a whole week. Second, it has to be self-sufficient. Connection with the cables with thousands of trash bins in the city will never be an option. We also need a real-time data collection to alert the user and even make a further collection plan. Also, integrated networking system can be missed. We have to connect the collection company with our trash bin. And we just came up with a new type of networking in a developing country. We'll just let you know in a second. Finally, the solution has to be fulfilled by any people. No training, no recruitment, only a change of new era, just an instant. We came up with 3 ideas. The first is wireless sensor networking. We try to build modules contains all the sensors and device which can be attached to every normal trash bins you can see. This module will contain a sensor of the garbage, and an order spray, and a networking device. The other is the drone-based design. We can fly our drones over the city at night to check out the condition of every bins, and self-guiding back to the charging place. Finally, we're trying to create interactive applications, that's what I mentioned, to utilize the networks of our phones as a networking device. Let's take a further look in our design.
Okay. Hello everyone. So moving ahead with the design concept. So these trash cans have modules that can be integrated on it. So it's a separate module for every type of purpose. So in order to have to reduce the cost, first of all, each module should cost low and each module should be easily replaced. So this is the concept that we have come across. It has QR codes on it that we'll be covering in a few seconds. So how do we create a sensor network using a trash can? Okay, that sounds like, how is that possible? Okay, let me tell you, there has been a lot of research on this. There are solutions available in the market, and it works on online sensor system. So for an example, we have 4 trash cans. Those connect to other 2 trash cans, and then that connects to a bigger trash can or a larger network device, and it makes a network. Moving ahead, so what about the data that we collect? So we can collect that data and send it to a website or a web server and make a map displaying all the trash cans in the area that suggest which need to be taken care of. So moving ahead, why us? Now talking about a lot of different concepts on this term, yes, there are online sensors, a network, a web server, but how do we handle an offline situation? We are off the grid. And also these kind of infrastructure take a lot of cost. So how do we move ahead in doing and dealing with these kind of issues? For example, for a country like India, where I come from, we have a lot of cities, crowded cities, pollution, population is increasing. Infrastructural cost should be negligible and it should be low. So we move ahead and describe a concept of trash can. So this is a trash can. We have sensor on it and it displays different barcodes. It also has multilingual text on it so that every people can understand what steps they need to follow to connect to it. So this is the first mechanical sensor that includes a spray system to get rid of the odor. The next system is the electronic based module system. We have we are trying to demonstrate a separate system. So this gives a detail of the volume in the trash can. So we use a dummy stick with a platform that will demonstrate the level of the trash in it. So once the trash level is filling up in the bin, so it displays different levels using different LEDs. So that's just to interact with people, how to understand it. Then comes part of the QR code.
Okay, so now for the QR code, we want to get people involved in this process. So a person's going to scan the QR code that's going to be placed on our bins, and which is going to redirect them to a web page, to our company's web page. Then they will know how many points they have, and they will redeem them for gift cards, prizes, or whatever. So what we are trying to say here is that we're going to have an interactive interface with the user. We are trying to get them involved in the process, sending text messages about overfilling, also scanning QR codes, and getting rewarded for doing that. They will need to create an account for doing this, and as you have seen earlier, they will earn points. Also, data for the company will be the statistics from the percentage of the bins that are getting overfilled, and also the fastest routes to pick them up. we want to incorporate future technologies to bring this solution.
And that's time. Thank you, Team Remo Sense. Judges, do you have any questions?
Yes. So are you planning on making this for consumers or is this for industrial size?
So this involves both. So it's a change that we are looking ahead. So we need to involve everyone in it. And these countries which are facing this problem usually are low on awareness about these kind of issues. So this kind of program hooks them up to get involved into it using this game or using this app. So what they do is they scan the data. It has certain data that reflects. I put different barcodes on it. So this is the best representation. So I put different barcodes. So this can be the data in that barcode can be specific to the volume of this particular trash bin. And once the user scans it, we can take the data and we can keep storing it in our databases. This keeps on collecting and collecting, and we have a lot of data that we can analyze and come up with a plan to collect those bins where we need quick attention and all those stuff. So the point here is we don't need an infrastructure. We just need people to send the data to the company, and to hook them up, we are keeping a reward system so that we can get people involved in it. And at the same time, if they are getting involved in it in any way possible, that creates awareness.
I noticed you had multiple sensors. Is there some reason that you had multiple modules and multiple sensors, or is there some way you could integrate this all into one?
Yeah. So there's a possibility that we can integrate all the modules into one. That will be cost effective. But the point is, what if I don't require a bin that has all the sensors on it? I just need a bin for my office that doesn't smell bad. Okay. So this can be done. I can modify my trash bins at my place using just one spray can or spray module. Then what if I need to connect my communal bin to a sensor which reflects data to the operator and they can come and collect it. So I'll just put a sensor module to it and I'll just keep scanning the data. When I feel it's full, and I'll just send them a data. And what if I want to automate it? Now at that point I'll have an online sensor system that will have either the GSM band channel or the Wi-Fi channel, and it will automatically ping the data to the web server and it will get accumulated. So that's the level we are trying to work.
I would like to add on to that. We also know these are for developing countries. So when it comes for the maintenance, and what if only one sensor is broken? It will be tough for these people who are not most educated to replace the whole accessory. That's also more cost to change the whole assembly for one part. If we have different sensors at different locations, that means they only have to change one sensor instead of the whole assembly, which will reduce costs for manufacturing and reduce costs for maintenance and reduce costs for these developing countries, so they can have more technology for their infrastructure.
Adding to Rohit's point, so if we look at the long-term point of view, change takes time. Everyone knows change takes time, and to start a change, we need to involve people. That's the first step that we need to have. So using the data that people are developing on an already structured infrastructure, we don't have to set up a new infrastructure. People will be sending us the data. Then we'll keep on monitoring that data and we'll collect it. And using different tools like machine learning tools, we can predict when there will be a trash can that will be full in certain time. We can use other technologies to take this ahead to a fully automated system. Now, the point is, we reduce cost without spending any infrastructure on it. Now we save cost from using less fuel. So we can use that cost in upgrading few sensors on few bins, which really need attention. So we have automated those. Now, using the same cycle, we can keep on accumulating funds, and we can use that funds into updating all our sensors and creating an infrastructure. So it will be like we are saving money and putting it in the system, and after few time, we have automated system in that country. So we'll be on par with the change that we are planning to do.
So you talked about off the grid, but everything you're talking about requires the grid. If you don't have cell phone with the ability to barcode.
That's why we also established the text message part of it.
Okay, don't have one of these. Doesn't work.
In most developing countries, they do have cell phones. Maybe not smartphones, but they do have cell phones that can send a text message.
Well, just to give you an idea, Caldwell out here, you can't do that. There are a lot of parts of the United States that don't have that technology, so try to think about something off of that. Where I can see some of this is in mass gathering commercialization areas. Large festivals and things, this would be very advantageous for that. I'm struggling with the developing country application, but there is some real...
Adding to your point would be, so say suppose, yes, there are certain areas without the cell connectivity that we require, but there we could map that with using the information and the data collected from surrounding areas, and we can use that to predict what kind of, when would the trash can or trash truck would have to go to those areas, and so that comes into the whole QR code idea where people have to send in those messages, create awareness. They need to be involved for their community for this project to be a success.
It doesn't only gives you your data, but it lets you know how the trash is flowing from one part to the other. So if there are few nodes missing in the track or on that path, we can like make predictions on those. So it can solve offline issues.
Thank you, Team Remo Sense.
Thank you.
So we'll have one more team, and then after this presentation, we'll take a short break. All the students have been working very hard this weekend, and I'm sure they're excited to go back to studying, which I bet was sorely neglected.
Howdy, I'm Adam Curtis. I'm a junior electrical engineering student here at Texas A&M. And for our team, I was our electrical systems expert.
Howdy, I'm Adriana Hernandez. I am a second year landscape architecture student. And for team, I was the graphic design and brand expert.
Howdy, I'm Vasant Kavari. I am a junior industrial engineer, and I was the team's cost analysis and prototype expert.
Howdy, I'm Ann Nguyen. I am a freshman in petroleum engineer, and I am a team video producer.
Howdy, I'm Sarojit Dev. I'm a mechanical engineering master's student. I was the CAD and prototyping expert for the team, and we are team Illuminate. Power outage. It's bad, isn't it? So imagine studying in the dark every single night. This is the problem we're trying to solve.
Dans mon village, il n'y a pas d'électricité. Des fois, quand je veux faire mes devoirs le soir, ce n'est pas possible. On ne peut pas apprendre nos leçons dans l'obscurité.
When the sun goes down, our lights stay on.
Obligé d'acheter des bougies pour avoir de la lumière. Quand il y a du vent, des bougies s'éteignent.
But for over 1 billion people in the world, this is exactly the opposite. What if I told you a water bottle could be the gateway to a child's education? Our low-cost light carousel provides an opportunity to these children to enhance and continue their education while using locally resourced materials. Together, we can further education because a brighter night is a brighter future.
countries, in many developing countries, most of the kids have to work during the day, which push them to rely on electricity to study at night. But the problem is, if those kids that are coming from these countries in this map, that these countries have really limited access to electricity, how can they study? Another problem that these children in rural communities face is extreme poverty. So if we all can agree that education is the really powerful weapon to change the world and end poverty, then we have to find a solution to provide that electricity that will allow them to study.
We are provided with a need statement of creating an inexpensive environment that will provide electricity for children to study when the sun goes down. We come up with 3 design requirements. It has to be able to accommodate at least 5 children. It has to be at its minimal cost for both our team and the children itself. And it has to be portable. After brainstorming, we come up with 3 different possible solutions. Solar panels provide a reliable power outage. However, it does not work well on cloudy days, and solar panels require batteries, therefore can be expensive to produce. Saltwater batteries, however, are very cheap to produce. However, it does not provide a good amount of power outage. Therefore,
for our selected design, we decided to go with a dynamo, which is an electrical generator that produces a current. This requires continuous input, but it doesn't require a battery to store that energy. And we're trying to stay away from that because batteries are either too expensive or the ones that aren't expensive don't give us enough power. However, once we started looking into this further, we realized that we were at a pivoting point because there already exists a solution as an energy source, and that's the gravity light. It's the optimal way to provide power in these settings because by placing a bag full of rocks, placing a bag full of rocks and then allowing that gravity to pull that down, it'll actually produce the current. And so at that point, we stopped looking at energy sources and we started looking at how can we create a light delivery system that's best suited for our needs. Because the gravity light only produces one beam of light, and that's not suitable for a classroom setting. Also, we would consider a relationship with gravity light in the future. Perhaps we could license a patent from them, or we could also consider forming a partnership with them. So now looking through our new designs with a key focus on light delivery. Our first design, we just had a simple stand where each of our could be removed, but then that would allow the student to actually shine the light on their work if they wanted to. However, that was bulky and it would require a stand. Our second design, we wanted to think about what about a foldable arm. This would allow the student to extend it over their work closer in case they needed more light. However, this would be bulky, and in case it broke, this would be difficult for them to fix.
So taking the best of both worlds is our final design. We call it the Illuminate. So best part is the design is easily rotatable. So wherever you sit, you have a lamp nearby, and it's rotatable, and it's also you can change the distance. Like in this prototype, you can keep it here or you can keep it here. So you can easily change wherever your book is. So you don't need to light up the entire room. You can light up just the specific spot where your book is. So why are we innovative? First things, it's light efficient. As I said, we don't need to light up the whole room. If you have just one kid studying, you can just switch on one of these and study under it. You don't need to light up an entire room. It's feasible and portable. Now, this entire thing doesn't have any exotic materials. These are materials that can be found at any local hardware stores. And also, this can be easily detached and you can carry it in a backpack. It weighs around 5 to 6 pounds. It is sustainable. Currently, the design is half sustainable. The base is wood, but the top is plastic. But in other countries where you have bamboo available, you can make the entire structure out of bamboo and make it sustainable and biodegradable. It is very simple to operate. Even a 5-year-old kid can operate. And also, it promotes recycling. These are the top halves of bottles. For every Illuminate that you make, you result in 6 water bottles that don't go to landfills, and waste recycling is a concern in those countries.
The main components that we will provide are the PVC pipes, the LED lights, the stand, the base, and the assembly manual. All of these products will be provided by us, and the rest of the materials can be easily found by the children in their environment. And the bottle sizes that we use, they can be of any shape and of any size. The assembly manual comes with instructions on how to insert and attach among with other different directions, and it's translated, due to the diversity of our team, it's translated into 6 other languages. Our price estimate, we came out with a low price of $5 per product. Now, if our LEDs do not break, we're looking at a lifespan of 20 years. But being realistic, it's going to come out to around 5 years. So that would be a $5 product for 5 children that lasts 5 years. And we can improve these costs even further by mass production techniques and recycled material to come out with even cheaper prices for these kids to afford.
So just to reiterate, we have a lighting system that will enable us to provide education to these students in the form of light at a low cost and a dependable system. And so while we have a few seconds left, we'd like to just take you some of.
You can like to demonstrate our
Yeah.
product?
Number 3.
You're welcome.
As I said, this is the rotatable design. If you want, you can have all 3 placed close by. So if a child has question, he can gather with his friends and they all can study under 3 beams of lights. You can easily transport it from here to here. And if we have a longer arm, then we can elongate the distance more.
And keeping in mind that it is for children, each of these are actually removable clips
That is time.
that we can remove.
Thank you very much, Team Illuminate. Judges, do you have any questions?
Okay, so the power source is this gravity piece of it. So I got this piece of it, but how do you see the gravity piece working?
The gravity piece would specifically be this portion. So right now, we're just considering the light. How are we going to actually get the light to them? And then we would consider the gravity portion, how we're actually powering it. So right now, we need an outside power source. But that's something that we consider already solved, and so we started looking at this aspect of the problem so that we could solve this part that isn't currently solved.
What's the cost on the gravity?
The gravity, so that they retail for about $70 to $80, so that's definitely much more expensive than this product. But that's something that's what they retail for, and so if we reached out and we formed a partnership, we might be able to get a lower cost that we could provide for these more impoverished communities. And also, we don't have an exact date, we don't have an exact timeline for how long they last, but knowing that our product lasts for so long, if their product was similar in lifetime, if we could, even if we had an initial high investment, if it had a long payout, then that would be something that we'd be interested in.
I'll ask you the question I asked the other group. How much light output are you envisioning?
We are looking at something around 150 to 200 lumens. So, it's as good as 10 to 20 watt bulb, because 10 to 20 watt LED bulb, because at the end of the day these are LEDs.
So, yeah, and again, we're just trying to focus. The reason why we can use such a small amount of lumens is because we're just trying to focus just on that small area of the page or the book, whatever they're working on.
Oh, so do you look up how much light it takes to read a book in the dark or anything like that?
So I reverse calculated it. So if you have a 40 watt bulb, it produces around 350 lumens that can light up a room. You don't need a room, so you go to half a room. So you need a half of that, say 100 to 150 lumens.
a small room.
Yeah. And then why did you decide on 5 children? Just curious.
That
what
was
the
part
number-
of the design process.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We can easily adjustable for one to any, like you plug it off, you have a smaller system.
Any other questions?
I guess, again, I'm gonna go back to the power source, is one of the concepts you could have is you could have the gravity power source, but you might have batteries as well, so you could have multiple different options, right?
Yeah, you can have both, but the gravity source doesn't require a battery.
I understand that, I got that.
But like we said, we initially selected the dynamo because we liked the fact that we didn't require a battery. So if for some reason they did purchase a dynamo system, which dynamo systems are comparable in cost about once you have it fully assembled, as the gravity light. So we realized that just exchanging it for another, which is more reliable and it's easier for them to transport and understand, we'd have a better trade-off there.
Thank you, Team Illuminate.
Yeah, just a second.
Okay. Right, like, yep, we're doing it.
Here's the index, that's how you Google.
Welcome back. Our next team up is Team No-Squito, and they are trying to solve the issue of vector-borne illnesses.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. We are No-Squito and we want to provide a system for better control of mosquito. I'm Sina Bagwani from Electrical Engineering Department.
I'm Srishti Kumar, I'm a freshman in electrical engineering.
I'm Ryan Beltran, I'm a sophomore in computer science.
And we present to you our video.
Virus. Boston reporting its first case of the disease. Now more than 30 cases detected here in the U.S., originating in South America and moving north.
That it has been linked to a rare neurological condition called microcephaly. Babies are born with abnormally small heads.
We're losing the battle against the mosquito. Why? Because if the mosquito keeps breeding, we're all losing the battle against it.
The yellow fever mosquito. The insect is spreading, especially in Brazil, transmitting diseases such as dengue fever, chikungunya, and now the Zika virus. The number of infections has seen a dramatic increase, and the WHO is alarmed. Puddles are a major problem as mosquitoes lay their eggs there.
So in our video, you just saw two types of arboviruses or mosquito-borne diseases, namely Zika and malaria. However, these are only two of the variety of arboviruses that exist today and have an equally devastating impact on society. But what if we had a mechanism, a way to identify potential mosquito breeding grounds that could nip the problem at its bud? So our solution is a three-tiered approach. The first is identification. We want to have a method to identify potential sources of potential mosquito breeding grounds. Secondly, we want to be able to map and analyze those places. So for example, in a city, we want to be able to have a map of all those potential sources and be able to send health workers out to those areas to treat those areas. And lastly, response and mitigation. During the competition, we were talking to several of our co-teams from Brazil and Mexico, and they stated that identifying the source itself would be such a great impact, because then we would reduce the job of healthcare workers significantly. Instead of having them to go out and visit every single part of the country, they would already have a map of these possible these possible breeding grounds, and only have to travel to those places and treat those. So with that, let's get started with step one, identification.
All right. So what our solution is basically is a quadcopter equipped with a laser and a camera, and is able to identify sources of water which may become potential breeding grounds for mosquitoes using those devices. So what you see here is a graph of how we were eventually able to do it, but we had multiple steps that we tried along the way. First thing that we thought is, all right, I can see water and I can recognize it pretty well. based off of the reflective properties of it. So we thought, let's look at the texture. But the problem is that specular surfaces don't actually have very many unique texture characteristics when you analyze them. About the only one that you can really use that you don't find based off of whatever they're reflecting is specular highlights, and those are only seen in a couple of with certain assumptions, and so that didn't turn out to be a very specular approach. And so then we tried, actually we tried one other thing, then we tried, the ocean's always bluer on the other side, right? And that's because when you look out further, water is reflecting the hue from the atmosphere, but as you approach it, the hue of water in reflective surfaces is determined actually more by what's underneath them. And so we thought maybe we could identify this shift. But the problem is mosquitoes like to breed in very small sources of water, often smaller than the bottle cap. And in order to track the change in hue over time, we have to do object detection from a considerable distance. And the idea of tracking things the size of a bottle cap, especially with edges as blurry as a puddle, is unrealistic. And if we were even able to get that kind of accuracy, it would require us to look at everything that size in order to see if it was water, and that would be computationally unfeasible. So that was also a non-starter. But then we came up with the idea that we can use the absorption and reflection of lasers in water and how they differ from on a regular surface. And that worked extremely well. What you see here is in the image, when the laser's over water, it's being reflected and absorbed, and when it's on the solid, or on the dry paper, it's not. And that program there is basically graphing the chances of it being water, and it worked extremely well.
Okay, as you can see here, by using the pinpoint accuracy of the laser and sweeping laser technology, we were able to, or we will be able to provide a kind of very precise map of small parts of the points of water in the, especially in the urban areas. It can be very important for us to for a fast reaction to the situation, especially after the flood, after the heavy rains. Also, this system can provide this kind of very important map about the different areas. And also it's very important because the laser technology can use different kind of software analysis behind the hardware which is provided, and can improve and improve and improve the maps based on different geological weather conditions.
All right, so taking us forward, there's a couple considerations that we had to look into, one being cost. Now the cost of this is tricky in that it depends heavily on what kind of performance you want out of it. For example, we think that we could get a working product with under a $500 cost. However, a major factor in that is what kind of range you want out of it, what kind of battery life you'd expect. And so we can get just about as expensive or low cost as you would like, which makes it tricky to analyze. However, that can be seen as an advantage in that densely urban areas could use a lower cost solution from multiple points because they can be centralized and they can go back and find a lot of interesting data. Whereas when you're in like a slightly less urban area, it would need a longer range in order to be of any real use. And you can also just optimize it based off of your budget. And then we had the idea of using quadcopters. We looked at a couple different methods, and quadcopters seem like the best type of drone for this application for the cost. And we want to market it to local governments and to health organizations because they're already trying to fix these problems. And so we can provide them with the tools to do it more successfully. They're already out there trying to apply pesticides or whatever, all these different methods that they're using. And they happen to go very broad and blanket larger areas because they don't have the pinpoint map. So by handing it to them, we allow them to get the maps to be maximally useful. Furthermore, we can extend this by improving the technology in a couple different ways. We've experimented with a few different methods, but we could also say like we can experiment with changing different properties about like the laser, for example, to see how that affects it in different conditions. We tested it with 3 different lasers actually this weekend, We used a class 3 red laser, class 3 blue, and a class 3 green. The blue and green both worked extremely well. The red did not, but we didn't test it in as many environments as you would actually encounter, and so that would be a step going forward, is how can we make this maximally robust. So using our system, we can identify water, and stagnant water is how the mosquitoes breed. That allows the health workers to be maximally productive, which will ultimately be able to save lives.
Judges, any questions?
The $500 cost, does that include the drone?
Yes. Yeah. Because here we don't need to rely on the very high resolution cameras, IR cameras, we can focus on the laser and use more software job, based on different algorithms and, higher the nature of the laser, pinpoint accuracy, and using cheap cameras and totally mix of, these ones can reduce the cost.
Back to the cost modularity, increasing the cost of the camera allows us to actually go more quickly because we can go from higher up. As it is, we have to take a relatively low approach in order to get the resolution requirements. If we had a more high-end camera, then we could do the same kind of analysis with the same quality from a higher elevation, which allows our laser line to sweep further. And of course, it also requires a more powerful laser if you're going to try and get the same effects from a higher elevation.
When you say higher elevation, what are you talking
Well, we were testing again with just laser pointers here, and so it's hard to say exactly what the effects will be outside, but we've been doing 5 feet distances, 10 feet distances with good results. We didn't actually test the maximum range that we could get this at, and it's hard to say for certain, but it would be probably lower than you typically fly a quadcopter, but you could get it at roughly the tree height, and so you could.
And because we are using a kind of sweeping laser technology, as you can see here in the video, we tried, for example, to locate the cameras at different places. Here you can see on our cantilever-like structure, and also we have a stationary camera. Both of them, we test them, and we noticed at the current position, we cannot rely on the movable camera. It's very helpful because it will increase, the view angle that we have. But the point is the shaking can, a little bit have problem and have, make some challenges on the different kind of processings that we need. Also about the, for example, different lasers, for sure if we go to the higher, elevations, we can sweep more areas faster. But for sure the prices will increase, and we don't want that. Because of that, for sure there will be a kind of compromise between the cost, between the speed, between the emergency of the response we will need in the different areas, and based on the provided data. Maybe the weather condition is very very well predictable in some areas, and we need less air reconnaissance in those kind of areas. Or some areas we will need faster and more frequent reconnaissances. Because of that, we try to focus on something that can increase the dexterity for the health practitioners. Because, for example, here in this structure, they can sit on the surface of the, the system can go and sit on the surface of the lakes, and based on that one, they can figure out where is the larvas, where is the water, is still contamination. But at the same time, we try to bring something more to the table. We try to scan the areas better, and in the urban areas, the children and population work and play in that area, focus on that area and bring something for faster recognition for those areas. But at the same time, our system have the flexibility, you know, to work with different kind of situation.
You guys have any more questions, perhaps?
Yes. So for how do you compare this to, like, I believe it's called LIGO? Did you look at other laser types of systems? And I was just curious, why you chose this one, or how is it different than other existing systems?
What was that one?
LIGO?
I'm not familiar with that one in particular.
LiDAR.
LiDAR.
Oh,
That's it.
LiDAR.
LiDAR. Thank you.
LiDAR? Okay. So LiDAR has, I think, a lot of direct applications for like navigating the quadcopter, but for identifying the water sources, it's not going to provide the same kind of information that we're looking for. And so this provided a really reliable method, especially for when there was smaller amounts of water. You would still see the absorption and reflection that allowed you to identify even cryptic water sources.
Great. That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you, Team No-Squito. Okay. Teams, make sure you speak extra loud so that your entire audience can hear you. Judges, if you are ready, I'd like to introduce Team Tridenti.
Howdy. My name is Jeffrey Gianotti. I'm a civil engineering major, class of 2018.
Hi, Stanley Tong, mechanical engineering senior.
Hi, I'm Shravani Talikama, PhD student in electrical engineering.
I'm Alex Ukia, mechanical engineering senior.
Hi, I'm Cesar Fuentes. I'm a mechanical engineer, also a senior.
Hi, I'm Prachi. I'm a civil engineering graduate student.
And we are here today to talk to you about our solution for accumulating floodwater tracking.
Around the globe, communities are threatened by accumulating floodwaters. These events cause damage to infrastructure, communities, and even loss of life. In the U.S. alone, Hurricane Harvey caused massive destruction worth approximately $40 billion of insured and uninsured loss. The impassability of roads led to a scarcity of household food, and damage to public utilities led to a need for water in some areas. Along with Houston, countries like India, Bangladesh, and Nigeria have also recently experienced devastation from intense floodwater accumulation. There is a need for more information on flood patterns that can allow us to design better water management systems. This would ensure that we lessen these devastating impacts in the future. Understanding these locations and having real-time flood mapping can assist in evacuation and emergency rescue services. The design of Tridenti's depth monitoring units will provide access to real-time floodwater data from a vast array of floating units. These units are designed to be airdropped into flooded areas in the thousands and begin to relay information. Through the use of GPS and existing topographical data, a floodwater map can be created and offer insight into future events. This method can be applied to stormwater accumulation, tsunami inundation, and other events all around the world to allow for better planning.
Our need statement focused on developing a tool for situations where flooding takes place due to unusual natural calamities. During such events, the flooding water accumulates at a very faster rate during a very short amount of time, and hence the real-time monitoring for the flood water depth becomes extremely important. So the need statement aimed at brainstorming for technologies that could be helpful in real-time flood depth monitoring and deploying sensors, and also look at the feasibility and practical applicability of the sensors. The key design requirements that emerged from the design statement were to detect the water depth accurately in real time, and we want to make it eco-friendly to an extent whatever is feasible, and it should be, of course, waterproof, and it should at least have a lifespan of 1 month, so that we do not have to deploy multiple sensors during one storm event.
So we had three basic concepts. The first concept is we would have a buoy system that would detach, or half of it would detach and float to the bottom attached to a tether. The detachment would have a pressure sensor, and using the pressure difference, we would be able to measure the depth. The second design that we had was also a buoy system, but we utilize sonar to measure the depth. And then the last design that we have is also another buoy with sonar, but it would be made completely of biodegradable material. We decided to go with the center solution because we felt that the tether would get caught on debris, so that was problematic, as well as the biodegradable materials. There's a limit on the biodegradable sensors, batteries, and the electronic components, so we didn't think that was a feasible option. Going to our functional flow diagram for our specific design, ideally we would have this dropped from an airplane, have a parachute deployed, and once it's safely in the water, it would begin to calculate the depth. After it's doing that, all the buoys in conjunction would transmit data to a central hub. This in turn would be processed and would be used to create a real-time map, flood map.
Now for the deployment feature of our design, we are going to airdrop it from a low-flying aircraft. We would attach a parachute in order to decrease the impact force once it lands in the water. The parachute would be biodegradable, and it would be attached through a water-soluble junction. This way, once the device is in the water, the parachute detaches, and over time it'll biodegrade while our device is in the water and is not being caught in debris due to the parachute. For the physical embodiment of our design, we had three priorities: the buoyancy of it, the waterproofing, and the low center of mass. One needed to be buoyant in order to float in water. We needed to be waterproof so the electronics inside are not damaged. And also, we needed to have a low center of gravity so that our sonar sensor can always stay pointing downwards and it never tips over. We achieved the buoyancy by utilizing an object that has a specific gravity less than 1. And we did that by using a plastic hamster ball. Where we waterproof the ball, we sealed it from the outside and no water can get in. You can see that from the left picture. It's in a bucket full with water and it's floating and there's no water getting into the electronics. Also, to achieve the low center of gravity, we kept most of the mass from the electronics on the lower hemisphere of our device.
So when it comes to the electronics, we used a sonar sensor to accurately determine the depth of the water. This sonar sensor was integrated along with a GPS sensor and a transmitter. The GPS sensor can provide the location of the unit accurately, and the location involves both the latitude and longitude and altitude data. So the altitude data can be used along with the already available GIS information to confirm the depth of the water that is calculated using the sonar sensor. The data acquisition and transmission is controlled using a microcontroller based circuit, and here we have used an Arduino board which has an embedded microcontroller in it. The whole unit is battery powered so that it is portable, and we made sure that by controlling the programming and by using low power electronics, the battery is sustainable for more than 1 year.
Okay, so looking at the GPS data, you can see on your left-hand side, this is our real-time GPS, and you can see the data is constantly feeding. Well, anyhow, it gave us latitude, gave us longitude, also giving us time and altitude measurements with a 0.5 meter resolution. So we tested this, and we did confirm our results with the Google Maps location of the EIC. And then you can see on your right-hand side, this is our sonar, our ultrasonic sensor. So we moved from 36 inches to 24 inches, and you can see on the Arduino it's reading out 36 inches and 24 inches at the steady state value. This is within the 3-inch resolution that we can guarantee from our sonar. Looking at a manufacturing standpoint, we can ballpark a manufacturing cost of raw materials cost about $15 per unit, and this involves getting higher quality sensors, looking at getting linear low density polyethylene for our material, and also getting personalized microcontrollers. Currently we're using an Arduino, and that has a lot more than we actually need, so by using a more optimized microcontroller we can reduce costs. Also by ordering in large sizes in mass production we can reduce those costs. Also the density that we're looking at for dispersion is about 1 unit for 1,400 square feet, and we seek some guidance to a professional engineer with experience in water resources, also looking at topography, historical data, and some street geometry to determine this density. This density can also be a variable of the specific city you're deploying it in. For example, in a very flat city, you can assume that 2 different points further away are still relatively within the same height. So you can interpolate that data and assume it's relatively the same, so you can lower your density there. Density is also a variable of the municipality and the accuracy and resolution that they want to get from their data. Looking at this flood depth, we can create the map to have a real-time flood tracking.
And looking towards the future, we have several goals put forth for our product. First and foremost, integrating with GIS systems, and this includes creating a flood map real-time for these municipalities. Also, we would like to integrate flow and direction and velocity into these maps so we can see how this water is flowing, where it's going, how fast, as well as tracking which roads are accessible due to heights of the roads and heights of the flood water, so that emergency vehicles can get through and help people in need. Also cost reduction, such as what he said, this involves mass production and consolidation of circuitry. And in the end, biodegradable materials would be the ultimate goal. If there are any innovations in biodegradable sensors and circuitry and batteries, we would love to go fully biodegradable. And so in conclusion, we have created a product that can be mass deployed. It is waterproof, it has sensors, and it can create real-time flood mapping. Thank you.
Judges, do you have any questions for Team Tridenti?
I was curious why you chose a parachute and, let's say, an airplane versus just a boat or other mechanism for deploying these devices.
So that's going to depend. Stanley talked about the density, and if you have a boat, that means it has to be a big enough boat to have hundreds and maybe thousands of these when you're dispersing them. You would have maybe have to be a human dispersion system, the human throwing them out. Well, in an airplane, you can kind of disperse them out through the air at a faster rate.
The only reason why I asked that is what happens, let's say, if a parachute doesn't deploy properly?
We'll be deploying in a large volume, so if we do lose 1 unit, that's not catastrophic.
Oh, I was thinking about maybe somebody on the ground.
Oh, okay. Well, let's assume that our parachutes work properly. I mean, when we have a parachute and when we design our system around it, we'll be sure that isn't happening. But also from a standpoint of dispersing, when we're dispersing from the air, we can guarantee that the boats aren't in danger, and if they're in, let's say, Houston, downtown Houston, city blocks, a lot of blocks, the boat's gonna have to go in block, but if it's an airplane, you can just disperse them over. So we believe that's the best way to get a relatively consistent dispersion.
So what activates a sensor in this?
Does it?
So we actually want to receive the data every 30 minutes. So we will be pre-programming the microcontroller, and we have a transmitter. We can also incorporate a receiver if we want to start the sensing process from an external location. But right now we only have a transmitter in our circuit, so we have to pre-program the microcontroller in order to, and it starts working as soon as we turn on the power supply.
So the second half of that question is, what if we wanted to deploy all these in where there is no water yet, and we want them to activate when they get wet and start telling us that we have floodwaters coming.
Well, the need statement is specifically addressing an unnatural kind of flood, maybe, because when you really look at something, what if it happened here, what if it happened here, where do you really draw the line? So we think that a need-based expression is the best way of going about it.
Well, now, let me rephrase it. Hurricane Harvey's coming in. We know Houston's going to flood, but we don't know when, where, and how fast. We want to deploy these into where it hasn't flooded yet. They activate and start telling us you've got water here now, and we can tell the rate of rise and which way it's headed, because you've already talked about tracking it. So that's what I'm saying. Can we take this to that level?
Yeah, if we include a receiver in the circuit, we can definitely start the processes from a remote location. Now, regarding the housing itself,
Well, I mean, the battery life, it's about a year. Even though our requirements were at least a month, with the battery that we have installed in, it'll last a year. So, like you said, if we know that Hurricane Harvey's coming in, we could disperse them before, and they would last up to a year.
For the sonar, I'm not familiar with how sonar, I know what sonar is, but I was curious, if you have this thing in water and it's moving around, how accurate is the depth when you actually have something that's not just pointed straight up and down? It looked like your sample was just something pointing straight at the ground. I didn't know if sonar would work when you're actually on a fluid type of environment.
Well, in that sense, if you take the minimum possible value of this shaking, you will get the true depth to the ground.
Okay.
So any further angle you go, it will be an increased length that it is measuring. So that you take the minimum, that's an easy programming thing to prepare prior, but take minimum length, that will be the depth.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much, Team Triton. Just give the judges a little bit more time.
After 3 years of drought,
We'll give the judges a little bit more time to get their scores in.
There you go.
We're excited, huh?
You can say that.
We want to share this idea with the world. What are you talking about?
And you're going to.
It's called Facebook.
We're on YouTube.
Oh gosh, yes. There's a reason I don't have social media.
You're on YouTube, man. That's right.
Okay, take it away, Team Flow Freak.
After 3 years of drought, a metropolitan area of nearly 4 million faces tough choices. Cape Town, South Africa could become the world's first major city to run out of water.
Town's water supplies are under threat. Its reserves depleted by waste and inefficiency. Once fertile lands, now drained and barren.
Capital Bengaluru is battling one of the worst ever water crunch. Weak monsoon and a rising demand has made water an everyday.
China is drying up. Water is running out. In the 1950s, there were 50,000 significant rivers. Now, less than half.
Capital Cairo is the most populated in the country, with over 20 million people. Just like the rest of Egypt, Cairo suffers.
4 out of 10 people are affected by water scarcity. Every one of us could save 2,200 gallons per year by using faucets correctly. 50% of the world water resources will be depleted by 2030. But there's a solution. The world is getting smarter. Smartphone technology enables us to detect specific frequencies emitted from a running faucet. From there, we're able to send real-time alerts to reduce overconsumption. We are able to measure local data and compare performance within neighborhoods. Our education model and karma point system enhances water awareness. So here's Flow Freak, making the smart world conscious.
A human can survive years without light, months without food, and a few days without water. My name is Bansi, and we are Flow Freaks.
I'm Peter Hughes.
I'm Lance Duncan.
I'm Patrick Hall.
I'm Hemant Parekh.
I'm Jack McGeary.
Looking to our previous problem, reconnecting to our previous problem, the average consumption of water in gallons per day per person in US is around 160 gallons, while in Africa, it's a mere 22 gallons of water. If we break down the water consumption in a household US domestic system, around 40% of the water is consumed through faucets. Hence, correlating the Cape Town situation with the rest of the world, the scenario itself indicates that how much potential a water consumption through a faucet has to be saved. And thus, this leads to our need statement for reducing the consumption of water being wasted and to measure it effectively and correlate it at the grassroots level.
So this leads to our design requirements. Our design requirements start with education. If we can inform the consumers about their overconsumption, they're far more likely to conserve water. Secondly, we'd like to identify potential sources. What are the sources that are really using all of our water? Where is most of the waste coming from? Our third requirement is we need to measure the water wasted. Fourth leads into determining the water flow. This is where the smartphone technology comes in. Using the microphone, we're able to determine water flow on an individual basis. Finally, we'd like to reward consumers with good water practices through our point system. This is where our design alternatives come in. So our first thought was, okay, we could put a flow meter underneath the faucet, and this would tell us exactly how much water they're using. But the problem with that is it's really expensive, and there's no way to get this out to everyone in need. So our second idea is, okay, let's cut to cost. What if we use a flow restrictor? We can manipulate the flow rate on almost every faucet. But that's not, it's cheap to produce, but not cheap to distribute. We need something that everyone can use. This is where flow frequency comes in. Using the smartphone technology that's located all throughout our world, we are able to design a free application that can encourage anyone and everyone to learn about water conservation and practices that they can implement themselves.
This idea is so that the consumer would record the sound from a faucet and then find the volumetric flow rate by recording the volume and time. From several programs that we created, we were able to find peak decibels that we can then transform into a different time domain from time to frequency. From there, we found a correlation between frequency and volumetric flow rate. Each faucet has a specific frequency and volumetric flow rate, therefore creating a specific data point that we can collect and use. From this, from the graphs that you see, on the left, you can see that it is the FFT that we found for frequency, and on the right is the correlation that we proved through several practices and experimentations that frequency is inversely proportional to volumetric flow rate.
So we wanted to use this technology on a global scale at an individual level. So that's where we came up with this app idea. When you first download the app and you open it up, there are a few initialization settings, and that's what you're seeing here. Nothing that's out of the ordinary, simply location, number of people in the household, things like that. Then you open up to your home screen. Your home screen is 3 panels. You can look at what you've used today, this week, or over the year as a whole. There's also comparison data here to see what your neighbors and people in your city are doing compared to your individual water usage. Now, if you click in the menu in the top left corner of your screen, you'll see 3 options. You have My Fixtures, New Fixture, and Settings. Settings is simply used for things like language change and other simple devices. So let's walk through a fixture setup. Now, this process takes less than 2 minutes for anyone to do. So all you have to do is create a name unique to that faucet, like bathroom hall or any other thing. So there is a very simple process. 2 active recordings are needed for each faucet. One while the faucet is off and one while the faucet is on. This gives us 2 data points that we can relate to the correlations that Lance was talking about just a few moments ago to create a unique audio file for that specific faucet. Now, all of these faucets in your home, whether you have one or many, are categorized as follows. You have faucets, you have sinks, you have showers, and so forth. If you look at a specific grouping, you can see all the faucets in your house and which ones are performing and which ones are not. You can look at that and say, okay, how can I improve this and what can I do better? Now, the way we alert the user is through a background monitoring system, as I mentioned earlier. The microphone is always on, recording, so it is triggered by the sound of the faucet turning on. And then it sends an alert, whether that be an audio or vibration alert, to the user after a certain set amount of time, which they choose in the application.
With our app, we can create, it's almost zero investment and zero operating cost. We can reach out to the 44% of the world population. Currently, 44% of the world population owns smartphones. Every year, 1 billion new users are being added to the smartphone system. The best benefit of this app is it is being free and the user's reachability. We can reach out to any users without any cost. And our app, since it's for environment benefits, we can always ask government for grants. Our app can also be used as a research purpose or survey purpose and can be used for data acquisition. Our app only runs on, as I said, only runs on free of cost and only needs an small operating cost. However, if you want to see the impact of it, the SDS says that every US resident goes to a restroom 9 times. It uses a faucet for almost 2 minutes. If we can reduce this time from 2 minutes to 45 seconds, for each household in US can save 160 gallons of water every year. This is sufficient that if a US residents want to save water, it is sufficient for 2 African citizens of water usage. So to put it in perspective, we created a little bit of experiment that you see the 1 gallon bottle, the water bottle here. In this facility, in last 48 hours, we checked that every time the faucet was on, it was on for an average 50 seconds of time. If we could use that and we could reduce that for 35 seconds, we would have said 1200 bottles of this can, 1200 gallons of water could have been saved in this last 48 hours in this facility. And that is the impact of our app.
Our first step to reducing the amount of water waste that we create is to get the information out there. The majority of Americans don't even realize how much water they're wasting on a normal day. Our second step would be to increase our database to allow more faucets, shower heads, tubs to be incorporated into our app. Next, we'd like to develop a reward system in order to reward those who are very good at reducing their water waste. Next, we would like to expand the platform, maybe allow it to go to computers or other systems to increase the amount of people that can use it over the world. Finally, we would like to collaborate with the UN and possibly USAID in teaching developing nations how to properly steward their water. Now, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Team Flow Freak. Judges, any questions?
I was curious, do you think this could drain your cell phone battery significantly if you have to have your speaker on continuously?
That's the issue with this, is because most applications already ask for all those things. They already ask to have access to your photos, they ask to have access to your microphone, and that microphone will only be turned on the moment it hears that certain frequency at a faucet. And each frequency is specific to every faucet.
And then how are you able to hear different faucets in different rooms from a cell
That would
phone?
be the range of the microphone. You are right next to it, and your cell phone's most likely right next to you as well.
You would set up for each individual faucet in your household, you would set up that process that we went through. Now each faucet is going to have a different range, and it would have its own FFT. So those trigger ranges are set up and they're running in the background, just like, hey Siri, okay Google. So it doesn't really drain your battery at all, any more than it does currently, because it's using the same permission.
So every person in the house that had one of these would have to have every faucet, every toilet, everything geared in.
Well, you have close.
Well, and here's the other part of it. So I got to have this with me when I go into the bathroom, and he's going to activate my microphone.
Your microphone's actually already activated while you're in the restroom. It's
Well,
currently
actu-
activated as well.
No, actually, I didn't. I got one of my smart people to turn all those off. But it's going to pick up. So let's say I'm in the bathroom and somebody flips on the faucet to brush their teeth. So now we're live.
Yes.
And all this is going to go to the cloud.
The actual recording does not go to the cloud. That's too much of a data transfer. It's simply the time length from the trigger on to trigger off that would be going to the cloud, and the location.
Okay, you said your data's free. I mean, your application's free. How are you going to fund your development?
Well, initially we were thinking possibly advertisements or partnering with companies so that they can push a more environmentally friendly message, so that they can say that they are supporting the environment through us.
Only ads can generate revenue up to 5 million as we searched on the net and we found out. So that would be enough for the operating cost, but we always would want it to be ad free, and that's why we are pushing more for the government grants and pushing to the NGOs and those kind of stuff, because it's for the environment and for us.
You said we could compare to our neighbors, and how would the data come down, and what about privacy? Like,
Yeah,
I don't want my neighbor to know how much water I'm
Well,
wasting.
UN did a study, and they started in South America, and they were comparing. They did 3 different case studies. One was comparing in your city, one was comparing your country, one was comparing in the world. And there's a direct correlation between you knowing what your neighbors are using and what you're using. And it's actually forced people to want to be more water conservative and learn about the education to be more water conservative. Whereas if you're just showing them like a global scale of we're using this much water in America, they're using this little water in Africa, you don't feel as motivated. When you see your neighbors are actually taking steps to be proactive about it, you actually want to get that education and get that encouragement.
And obviously all of the data would be anonymously. You wouldn't be able to see like, oh, Mrs. Blank is using this much. It's more of like who the highest consumer, not who, but a highest consumer's line, a lowest consumer's line, and where you are in the middle.
We have that available like for electricity now. You can just go to your local.
Yeah, I can picture this metaphor for like like Siri or those other home devices versus maybe cell phones even.
Any more questions? Sounds like Dad has something to harp on other than the thermostat. Thank you so much, Team Flow Freak. Our last team of the afternoon. Erase the waste, head on up. Got nothing on it. The naked one.
Hi, my name is Erin.
Ooh, let's give them just a little bit more time.
Just kidding.
No, good. This is Rodney.
Like the enthusiasm, Erin. All right, Team Erase the Waste.
Hi, my name is Erin. My name is Megan.
My name is Srinivas.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Sam.
I'm Robert.
And we are Erase the Waste.
Imagine a single family, 2 parents and 1 child. As they sit at home, water floods the village. It's a typhoon. Children and parents are left homeless, no food, no shelter, nothing. They sit hungry and helpless, waiting for aid. A rescue ship approaches with enough rice and grains to feed the village, but once the load is brought out, every bag is covered in a film of green mold. In the haste of packing the supplies, the food was not dried fully, bags were inadequately sealed and torn in transit. This story is just one example of how food goes to waste while others go hungry. With 30 to 50% of the world's food never getting consumed, our new bagging system will erase the waste and keep your grain safe. Here's how we do it. Our new organic, hermetic storage bag is an ideal way to solve these issues because of its dual-layered design and innovative closing mechanism. These features prevent food wastage with durability, isolation, and an airtight seal. Join us and help protect our food and put an end to needless wastage with Erase the Waste.
So, 30 to 50% of our food never gets consumed. That is a huge problem, and with that in mind, we knew we needed to narrow our focus. We ran some statistic analysis. We found that 53% of waste is in grains, and 25% of your waste is in the storage and processing stage of the cultivation. So when we knew that, we needed to find our specific areas to focus on. In America, most of our waste comes from after consumption. So you buy your food, there's a lot of waste that goes into throwing it away. But in underdeveloped countries where food is more scarce, most of their loss is in contamination. So that might be mold, like microbes, and also insect contamination.
With that in mind, we came up with some requirements that our product had to fulfill. It had to restrict the microbial growth in the grains. It had to be a reusable product, cost-effective, mobile, and non-toxic to contain the rice.
With these design considerations in mind, we first looked at what rice and other grains are currently transported in, which is plastic bags. And we thought, okay, plastic bags, right now, they are flimsy, they can tear easily, and therefore have lots of, are very prone to microorganisms growing in them. So what if we vacuum sealed them, like we do our food? However, vacuum sealing is expensive, it requires extra equipment, and it takes time that these rice companies, processing companies do not have in packaging it. We looked at pumping sealed containers, sealed bags, full of carbon dioxide. Similarly to vacuum sealing it, this would get rid of the oxygen and therefore kill off microorganisms. Looking at these two options, we said, okay, we're still looking at plastic bags. What else is there? A more sustainable option would be some kind of wood, maybe. Teak wood is waterproof, and we could build some kind of cylinder that would be able to be pushed instead of lugged. However, this is extremely expensive and heavy and must be coated in a epoxy that is toxic to consuming the food that is inside of it. So what did we do?
Our final design is a durable, organic, hermetic bag. The aim of our design is to aid developing countries in effectively storing cereal crops. And that's where we stand out. Its double-layered design allows for every bag to be completely isolated from surrounding bags while also adding protection. Our unique roll-down bag design allows for the rice to be effectively protected and isolated, while also potentially saving companies hundreds of thousands of dollars and maybe even saving lives. We have a demo.
So our hermetic bag helps food companies transport rice without loss by reducing the microbial growth in their product and also by increasing the durability of the bag. Unlike our competitors whose bags are weak, immobile, and allow microbial growth. In the top 10 rice producing nations in the Asian Pacific area produce up to 700 million metric tons of rice in a year. Roughly 15% of that was lost in transport, which can equate to about $4 billion lost from these transportation problems such as microbial growth and tears in bags. We found single claims of individual ships that lost up to $100,000 in just one shipment of rice from these problems. Our sealed bag will create an isolated environment that won't allow the mold or other anaerobic or aerobic microbes to spread throughout the hull of the ship to all of the different bags. And the bag will also be durable, so it can maintain its integrity through the trip and be used for multiple transport operations.
So how does our product fit in? So we all know that major rice plants such as Monsanto and Fuller operate at a breakneck pace. In fact, they have 48 hours to deliver their processed grains since when they get their grains and the paddy from the rice farms themselves. This causes haste, and in this haste, errors are made. Whether these errors be that they improperly dry the grain and allow moisture in there, or they improperly package the bag and causes leakage during transportation, food is wasted. Our product will prevent this wastage by protecting the grain in such fashion that it protects it from harmful environments and factors such as bacteria and other dangerous microbes. Furthermore, the improved sealing function is an improvement over current solutions to this problem, as it will reduce the chance of any leakage of grains from the bag itself. And it will also, as Daniel previously mentioned, it will not allow the spread of any bacteria in one bag to other bags. Lastly, the durable and organic design is what makes it an ideal candidate for processing facilities to use it over and over again as a reusable model for transportation operations.
So for expandability, our durable hermetic bag can be used in the transportation and storage of other foodstuffs. It can be extended for applications beyond rice and the Asia Pacific region. Some of these foodstuffs include coffee beans, spices, maize, and wheat, and they all have similar storage and transportation requirements, namely the humidity, isolation, and resisting tears.
We hope you'll join us in our mission to prevent food waste. Thank you.
Okay, the main question I have is, what do you think the cost of this is going to be versus an existing solution bag?
Okay, so our prototype was purchased by retail price, and we spent around maybe $5 developing it. And again, our prototype, some things could be cheaper, some things we could work around other things. But just for example, I don't know if this was stated exactly, but there was a case where there was 12,000 bags wasted and thrown out, which cost around in between $500,000 to $750,000. What's $12,000 to gain that 700 or that wastage back?
And these companies will be buying very large quantities of it, and will be producing in very large quantities, which will drive down the cost and also drive down the price that they have to pay for it as well.
How much more does this bag weigh than the other bags?
It'll be roughly the same size. So standard, they have 50 kilogram size bags. Like that's how much rice will be in it. So
I'm just talking about the bag itself, because the bag itself is going to be more robust, which is going to increase weight, which increase shipping.
I guess what makes our product stand out is not that it's definitely more robust, but it's the fact that it has 2 layers, and the inside layer is waterproof, and that's what seals the rice from the outside environment. So it's not it will be a little bit heavier, but we believe that those calculation or those differences will be minute, just because the outside layer is very similar to the material that they use right now.
you'll also be able to use the top section to be able to haul it instead of just a bag that you maybe have mulch in at Home Depot, that type of shape. Instead, when people are transporting it and loading it into trucks and starting to put it on the ship, they'll have a way to carry multiple of them at once.
One current issue is that when they do have a plastic bag that may be 1 layer, they can't pick it up with hooks, so they have to pick it up with a whole pallet, and there's no way to carry it other than just pure manpower.
So our solution has this handle that seals it, but also gives you somewhere to latch it.
So it effectively seals, and then just like that, it opens.
And what is the material of the one inside and the one outside?
They're both polyethylene. The inside is just a sheet polyethylene, like a Ziploc bag, and the outside is a woven polyethylene to give it more durability.
Ideally, in the final product, will be not two separate bags, but one fully integrated product with layers.
So let's say that they make a mistake in the processing of the grain and they put wet grain in this. Nothing's going to change what happens to it in the sealed container. But what your packaging will do is prevent this one from contaminating the rest of our.
Yes, ma'am.
Comment also on that is we have identified the specific species of, well, obviously all insects are aerobic, but of the molds that grow in them, that are most common, I guess, those are highly aerobic. So this is an airtight seal, and if they are effective in pushing out most of the oxygen that is in it, depending on how much they grow, they could just suffocate inside our airtight bag.
So ideally, anything that's aerobic that'll grow inside of it will end up killing itself and use its entire oxygen supply and kill itself with its own carbon dioxide. And anything anaerobic that would grow inside of it would be maintained inside of this one bag and would not spread throughout.
I'd also like to add, we made this bag completely from scratch. So we seamed the edges ourselves, we made everything ourselves, and it held with our makeshift prototyping skills. I think it held up a lot better and with actual manufacturing. Right.
Any other questions?
So, just curious, do you see this as scalable so that for like the consumers at the end, you could have this and it'd be in a shape that'd be easier for them to use, but also larger size for bulk transportation?
Exactly. I have friends from all around the world, and I asked, and they told me that is a huge issue. So a lot of them have clay pots or just plastic bins or whatever, just depending on how much rice they actually use. And every single time they said that it's just during the summer it's infested with rice bugs and stuff like that. And this, if maybe a few would get in there, they're suffocated and dead at least, and it keeps the numbers down, keeps them from reproducing inside the rice.
So the reusable parts for the inline consumer, not necessarily the industry.
Right. But exactly.
They're not going to send them
Right.
back from overseas.
Right.
They're not correct.
But the idea is sealing the insects.
Thank you very much, Team Erase the Waste.
Thank you.
And innovated since our check-ins on Saturday morning, all the way to your final presentations this evening. And again, what's wonderful about this weekend is that there were 14 other countries who are innovating alongside us, and all of these students took time to interact with one another. So we had calls happening in Cambodia to Wichita, and from the US to Brazil. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. The judges and I are going to go deliberate in the judging room. Participants, I do ask that you stick around. We're going to announce the winners, but also we're going to take a group picture, and we have a short survey that we're going to need you to fill out, along with a second survey that we're going to mail out to you later. So thank you again for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. Judges, if you would follow me.
Bring your own device.
Where are you? I'm making sure you're here. Sorry to get you excited. Samara, Remo Sense, Illuminate, No-Squito, Water Rangers, the team formerly known as Water Rangers and now Trident Team, Clo Freaks, Freak, and Erase the Waste. You're all here? Great. Why, thank you, sir. Making sure my background's all pretty.
Not that I've done this one before.
Yeah, you've never done this before. Well, as you can tell from how long it took for the judges to decide on a winner, you all did an exceptional job this weekend. There was a lot of really wonderful products and presentations that happened, but unfortunately, there can only be 3. So, our third place winner, receiving $500 for the first ever Invent for the Planet at Texas A&M, is Team Samara. One of our judges presenting the check.
I'll do it. All right. Great job.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
There you go. Thank you, sir. All right.
Just
One
go
more.
down
There we
the
go.
line.
Are we taking a picture?
Photos.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
All right, our second place team, winning $750 at this year's Invent for the Planet, is Erase the Waste.
Watch how this works. Congratulations. Congratulations. There you go. All right.
Thank you.
Saving time.
Maybe I should show you the check.
Everyone look over here. This way.
Great job. Great job. Great job.
Okay, I have the pleasure of being able to announce the first place team. Now the first place team will also submit their video to be able to be judged along with the 13 other winning teams who have come from around the globe. And so what we're going to be doing with the first place team is we're going to re-record your presentation so that we have it all in 10 minutes. That's what the rest of everybody's doing. It'll be submitted then online, and we've got a panel of judges from around the world who are actually going to be looking at all 14 of them and judging them using the exact same criteria. Everyone in the world has used the exact same criteria to come up with it. So the team that won this is going to win $1,000 for here. That team's going to win. I also want to remind you that each and every one of you, we want you to come back and continue to develop your solutions. This is engineering entrepreneurship. Let's take these solutions and let's make them into something and send them around the world. Let's bring these solutions to the world. You've done a great job of collaborating with other people around the world. It's been interesting to see because while you're competing, you're also working with them. And you found out some very interesting things, and you found out that other people have different perspectives. And those different perspectives are what's going to make you a better designer. So I'm sure you're tired of listening to me because I'm tired of talking. And the first place team is Illuminate. Got it?
Yeah, like you've spent 48 hours together.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you, everyone. Oh, by the way, I need those checks back, all right? You can take your pictures, but I need the checks back. everybody will come up here, we'll take a quick shot, a quick group shot. We'll make it as quick as possible. What? You already took the group picture? Oh, cool. Never mind. So everybody, just clean up. Make sure you clean up your area. Turn all your stuff back in. Thank you very much. We'll be doing this again in April on the assistive technology. Have a good evening. Study hard. Tomorrow is school. Sorry. Good night. Don't leave. I need